Donald Trump back in the White House on Monday. Will his second term be different from his first? And the TikTok ban in the US is upheld in the Supreme Court. What's the impact? We talked to a TikToker with 35 million followers. Good evening. This is Newsnight, brought to you live every weeknight from Broadcasting House with the best insights and interviews. Tonight, with the inauguration due to take place on Monday, indoors because of the Arctic cold, we're going to try and lift the hood on what the next 4 years might look like in the Trump White House, with former Trump ambassador Gordon Sondland, the author, playwright and columnist for Byline Times, Bonnie Greer, and the man who wrote the book on Trump's first term, Michael Wolff. It was 8 years ago that Barack Obama passed the baton to Donald Trump for the first time. Let's begin with a reminder of what happened next.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord.
We will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission.
You're trivializing impeachment. We passed the largest tax cuts in the history of our country.
We have delivered a safe and effective vaccine in just 9 months.
What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
white like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
We're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special.
Well, let's talk to you first. Gordon Sondland, you were Trump's US ambassador to the EU between 2018 and 2020. I noticed you were tapping your foot along to that montage. Just take us into the White House. What's he going to do in the first 100 days, do you think?
Well, I think it was a blessing in disguise, actually, that he lost the last election, because it gave him 4 years to really think through who represents the Republican Party in terms of the constituency, and also to really consolidate his support in a very broad way that very few candidates have ever been able to do. And so I think he is going to hit the ground running. He's got a very ambitious agenda. If he even accomplishes a small fraction of what he wants to accomplish, it's going to be a home run for the American people. And I don't mean for Republican Americans. I mean for all Americans.
What do you think first? What are the key things he wants to get done in those
the one he
days?
campaigned on is immigration. We have to get the borders closed. We have to get a sane immigration policy where we know every person that comes into the country and leaves the country, and follow on from there with tax policy, with rebuilding our military, which has been woefully inadequate for the challenges.
The question is, sorry to interrupt, I suppose the question is, can he get it done? There was a bit of a reminder through that montage that it was at times chaotic, that first administration. What's he going to do differently? His character's the same, isn't it?
Yeah, but it wasn't his character that was the problem. From the day he came down the escalator at Trump Tower and announced that he was going to run, he's had nothing but strong gale force headwinds through his entire first term, primarily from the media, but also, to be fair, from the public. I think that's changed dramatically. I think the wind has shifted to his back. You have a lot of centrist Democrats who are now supporting a lot of his policies. He has control of all of the levers of power, and he has 2 years, really, to move the needle quickly. And that's why you see this torrent of appointments. There'll be a ton of executive orders, and things are going to move at a pace that the country hasn't seen in a long time.
And what about in terms of personnel? When it comes to who survives in the White House, is it all transactional?
It's somewhat transactional and somewhat relational, but I would say transactional has always been the thing with Trump. And the thing about Trump is he's very, very transparent. Whether you agree with him or don't agree with him, he's been saying many of the things that he says today 20 and 30 years ago publicly. It's well documented. There are magazine articles, there are old videos of him being interviewed, and he's very consistent on most issues.
I guess he wasn't very transparent about payments to Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, well, there was that.
You're not going to fight that one. I mean, and foreign policy issues, you're acutely aware of, your ambassador to the EU, as I said. Trump said he's going to get a deal on Ukraine. He said he was going to do it in the first day. It's now being said in the first 100 days. How's he going to do it?
Well, let's talk about the first day. I wish the media would learn to speak Trump speak.
Because you can't blame the media.
Yeah, no, I can. And the reason is when he says I'm going to do something in 24 hours, everyone knows he doesn't mean literally. What he means is I'm going to focus like a laser until this gets done, and it's going to happen quickly. I'm not going to take months and years to do this. I'm going to do it quickly. That's what he means.
OK, well, let's bring in our other panelist, Michael Wolff, just to bring you in from the US. Take us right into that White House. You've been in there the previous time. What will it be like next week?
Well, I don't believe that people change very much over time, even over 4 years. So I think the coming White House will be like the White House the Trump White House that we've lived through before. Trump is very much the same person. Trump has been the same person throughout his career. The Trump in the White House wasn't that different from the Trump in Trump Tower. This is a man exclusively, again, emphasis there, interested in headlines. He is always telling a story, and the story is always the Trump story. And it really depends on this headline, which is superseded by the next headline, which is superseded by the next headline. So there will be the Let's Take Over Greenland episode. Then there will be the Let's Take Over the canal episode. Will those things happen? Not on your life, but the headlines will happen.
And do you buy into what Gordon Sondland is saying, that Donald Trump has learnt from the last time?
I could not disagree with anything more than what that gentleman said. I think that gentleman appears never to have actually met Donald Trump. Perhaps I'm wrong, but it's certainly if so, he has decided not to ignore the reality of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a man who has never, and I think I know certainly an overwhelmingly number of people who have worked with Donald Trump, never thought through anything as that gentleman suggested he has been doing over the past 4 years.
But if you look at his campaign, I mean, some people said it was disciplined, it was certainly effective. Isn't that a sign that things this time will be done differently?
No, I don't think so, and I don't think it was. Discipline. He won. It was effective. Well, yes, he won. But we can go over the list of indictments, the list of fines. It was an extraordinary campaign, a campaign the likes of which we have never seen in American history. So it's extremely hard to begin to say, what does that campaign mean? What do 4 criminal indictments add up to? Many people believe that they will add up to revenge. That is the thing that he is going to pursue the most passionately. I tend to believe that's not true either, because he pursues. The passion lasts for a day, and then he's on to something else.
And before I bring Bonnie Greer in, Gordon Sondland, just respond to what you've heard.
This gentleman doesn't have a clue as to what he's talking about. I mean,
have you spent lots of time with Trump?
A lot of time with him, and this is complete drivel. Trump is not interested as much as headlines as he is in deliverables. which is very refreshing for a politician that actually wants to close deals instead of talking for them. Well, don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. Please be quiet and let me finish.
No,
you're completely full of nonsense. You don't know what you're talking about. I know you want to sell books, but come on.
This is beyond nonsense. This is beyond. This is not
you're
reality.
Crazy.
Okay.
This is just agitprop that you're spouting here.
Let's bring Bonnie Greer in here, because there will be people who are absolutely dreading Donald Trump's arrival on Monday. You, I think, are really fearful about what's going to happen.
Well, you know, it took me about 4 weeks to go back and look at the news again. I mean, that's how I felt about the election. I have to be in the Michael Wolff camp here, and as a former New Yorker and a Chicagoan, Donald Trump is like the ultimate bridge and tunnel person, in the sense that this guy is basically still in his bedroom in Queens when he grew up. And the beauty of that is that he knows how to market that to hit that point in every American.
Because what then are you worried that he's going to do?
Oh, Donald Trump is going to do everything. He's going to try to do everything he said. He's going to try. But
so when it comes to Chicago, for example?
Oh, well, he's going to try and go into Chicago and take ICE in there, and sort of, I don't know what he thinks he's going to do. Although the mayor said that ICE has no jurisdiction in Chicago, the federal government can't do that. We do have a thing called Posse Comitatus, which doesn't allow the military to go in and do that sort of thing, but Trump will try and find a way to do it.
So you're saying this is in terms of rounding up illegals?
Well, you know, he has to do this, you see, because Trump is a shill. So what's important is what he sells, he's got to deliver.
But he also got a mandate for it, hasn't he?
Well, he did.
So that's the big
set piece that he's going to try and make happen. So he's going to try and do everything he said, of course. And people, the beauty of this guy is that he's such a sort of television personality, an ad man, that he understands that for everything he sells, there's somebody who can buy it. Always, even people whose interests he doesn't represent, they'll find something inside of the Trump brand that they can buy. He knows how to sell. So that's what he does.
And Gordon Sondland, for you, do you think that that's what he'll do, that Chicago and places like that will be the places that he heads into and that will be his priority?
He'll do exactly what he said he would do. In this way, I agree with Bonnie. But that's what the American people want him to do. And I don't mean Republican Americans. I mean all Americans. You know, ICE, first of all, is not a military organization.
No,
it's a federal law enforcement organization.
No, it's not. But you know, it's not.
And it's absolutely legal for him to
not
go.
Against the police department.
They're not going against the police department. Tom Homan said that the ICE will deal with what it is mandated to deal with. If the police department wants to cooperate, they welcome them. If the police department doesn't want to cooperate, they should stay out of the way, because ICE has a mandate.
And Michael Wolff, if I just could bring you in, please, just tell us about the family, because, you know, last time we saw Donald Trump's administration, it was had quite a few family members involved. Your book focused on his daughter Ivanka and Jared Kushner, her husband. This time, who's in and who's out in terms of family, do you think?
Well, Jared and Ivanka are not going to, as far as we know at this point, participate in this new White House. His son, Don Jr., is in an orbit around him, but has never been taken into the White House in an official capacity. So there really aren't that many family members at this point. Eric Trump's wife, Lara Trump, there's a lot of talk that she will take the family portfolio. I mean, one of the interesting questions, family-wise, is what about Melania, or often on the campaign trail, as it was put, where is Melania? So I think that's going to be... Busy
making a documentary, it turns out.
It's going to be, yes, she's making a documentary. But that's going to be interesting. Where is the First Lady in the White House? Does the media take notice of the fact that she's really not in the White House? Wasn't in the first White House, wasn't really in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, it's one of the many interesting subtexts that we're going to see in what will say what you want. It will be a kind of fascinating first 100 days and possibly 4 years.
And Bonnie Gray, what do you make of the people he's picked for his administration so far?
I haven't paid attention to them at all. So, what is interesting to me living here as an American, I've been here a long time, and what is fascinating to me is not Trump so much, it's the electorate. There is no time, I can't think of any time, and I read history at university, so American history is interesting to me, that an electorate would actually think of electing a convicted felon as president of the United States. It's an interesting point where the country has arrived at. Because remember, 50 years ago, it was the Republican Party that got a Republican president out of the White House, and that's Richard Nixon. Barry Goldwater walked into him.
The convicted felon thing is such a great, it's such a great talking point. There is no human being on earth that particular case would have been brought against, except for Donald Trump.
But he's convicted. It doesn't matter if that Gordon. He got convicted.
Let me tell you, the real jury, which are the American people, decided he was innocent.
No, the real jury are the people who were selected to be the jury. That's the jury.
Talking point.
I mean, what's this
so
about?
He just, the gentleman just repeated a talking point.
I know your name. You're Michael. I'm Gordon. I'm not the gentleman.
To all of the Trump surrogates.
Who is this guy?
Say this: the real jury is would be on in the general election, not the jury that sat in New York and in fact convicted.
Well, there's a reason he was given a discharge. Is the judge even, who is bitterly partisan, the judge realized that the American people have spoken.
We're going to stop this because I don't think you're going to agree, and we've got other things to talk about, but do please stay with us because I want to talk about TikTok, which is one of the world's biggest social media platforms. It has 1 billion users, with 170 million of them in the United States. The site is valued at £80 billion, and that's a conservative estimate, but it is not just TikTok's owners who do well from it. Users can also make a pretty penny, with many bringing in around £3,000 for a simple 15-second post. And if you're really popular, like Charlie D'Amelio, you could make a whopping £200,000 a post. But that will soon change for influencers like Charlie, because TikTok will be banned in the US from Sunday amid concerns about its links to the Chinese government. So what next for TikTok? Well, reports suggest Elon Musk could try and buy it. The 25-year-old YouTube star Mr. Beast has been mooted as another potential buyer, and incoming President Donald Trump could intervene too, after saying last month that he has a warm spot in his heart for TikTok. Well, I'm joined by two TikTokers. Kyle Thomas is reported to be the UK's highest paid TikTok creator. He has almost 35 million followers, and he's joining us now from Belfast. And from the US, V Spear is the creator of Under the Desk News, which has more than 3 million followers. They are with us from New York. Welcome to you both. Thank you for coming on Newsnight. And Kyle, if we start with you, as I said, you're the biggest British TikToker. How will this ban impact you if it comes in? Will it impact you?
Well, yeah, I think it's really easy for everyone to say, oh, it's just the USA and we're all going to be okay. But I think for many creators, the USA is a big part of my following. But I think for the whole app entirely, the USA lead a lot of that culture and they lead a lot of the trends on the app. And I think a lot of the content that actually comes out of TikTok that people watch is American content. So there's two ways of looking at it. I could say, oh, I may now be a really big creator on the platform because you lose a lot of the American creators. But I think the reality is it will be the downfall of TikTok if the US does ban it, which is a shame.
So would you prefer then to see someone else buy it and keep it going the way it's been going? Or could you see this as an opportunity to move platforms?
I think that obviously if it has to happen, it will be an opportunity to move platforms, and there are platforms that maybe carry a little bit more stability because it's not the first time that TikTok's sort of spoken about being banned. But I would be so sad to see it go. And if it means someone else buying it saves the day, then perfect, because I still think there's a huge place for TikTok. And other platforms have tried to sort of recreate that, but TikTok's still sort of leading. So yeah, I'd love if it stayed.
And V, this will obviously have a much bigger impact in the US where you are. How are you feeling, and how is the TikTok community reacting to what's happened?
I'm devastated, as is much of the TikTok community. I've spent a good part of my day fielding questions and DMs from followers and other creators who are not just worried about the economic impact of a TikTok ban, but also the community impact of a TikTok ban. Where am I going to find my friends? How am I going to stay in touch with current events? It is a global app. A lot of us do follow creators in the UK and they follow us back. And that exchange of open communication in a global environment is just vital to us continuing forward. And it's just absolutely devastating.
But do you appreciate why the US government wanted to do this? And do you accept that there is a national security threat from TikTok?
No, I don't. And actually, there is not. So there has never been evidence presented that TikTok presents a unique national security issue. In fact, TikTok was never given a trial in the United States. And I think there's a lack of information out there as to how this ban came to be and all the lies that were told to put it into place. Congress talked about having a TikTok ban, then they shoved it in a humanitarian aid bill. The TikTok ban was never debated on the Senate floor here in the United States, and the president was presented a humanitarian aid bill to sign. They thought, well, if we sign this in the spring, we'll have until January 19th to try and take the TikTok ban out of it, and they quite simply ran out of time. As far as finding a buyer goes, which is what the legislation says, TikTok can continue as long as they find a buyer. Who's the seller? I continue to hear the Chinese have to sell. The Chinese have to sell. What are their names? Who are the Chinese owners of TikTok? You'll find that the Chinese don't own TikTok. In fact, TikTok is 60% owned by global investors. 4 of the 5 members on their board are Americans. And there's no such way to sell the app because they built into the sale that TikTok would also have to scrub the entire source code for everything that's been on TikTok to this point, which TikTok has said would take us 3 years to rewrite.
I'd like to bring Carl Thomas back in because, I mean, some people might say, Carl, and I'm interested in this, if it really is true, and clearly those lawmakers thought it was, that China is mining your data and compromising the security of democratic states, why is the TikTok generation not more worried about that?
I think if I'm honest, and the way that I look at it, I completely understand that there's a threat because people can kind of, then our information can be tracked and our personalities can be tracked through these algorithms. But the truth is that those algorithms are with all the social media platforms. And I think by putting anything into the internet or anything on social media, you're trusting in that. So I think for our generation, especially, it's sort of like, well, what are they going to do with that information? Where is the threat there? That's what we kind of maybe can't see, or what a lot of people aren't seeing. But also, I think as a generation, we've grown up with the internet, but we've also grown up to be cautious and very careful of what we're putting out there. So I think for a lot of us, it's like, well, what I put out there, what I put into my phone, you know, it always runs that risk. I
so you're weighing it up and
algorithms,
saying, I understand that there's a risk, but equally the resonance of this platform is more important. Why is it? Just explain to people watching, why is it such a big deal?
I wouldn't necessarily say it was more important. I would just say that there's that risk with all social media and all usage of the internet. And I think that you've always got to be cautious.
What does TikTok mean to you?
I think it's just a very important platform for so many people, but that's because it's brought incredible opportunities for myself and for me to sort of show my creativity and have this platform where I can really be who I am and express who I am and my interests and all of these different things. And I think for a lot of other people, like the other person on this interview said, it's definitely about finding community and finding something that where you feel you fit in. And then obviously for a lot of other people, it's businesses that they've created through the platform, friends they've made, places where they've felt seen. And another really important thing is media and the news that we absorb. I would only ever watch BBC if I was sitting in my grandma's house and she had it on. Now I scroll through on TikTok, and when I was 15 years old, it was the same. I could see clips and kind of weigh up my own opinion while being a youngster.
We'll take that. Just before we go, from both of you, but Carl first, what is your message to Donald Trump, who's heading into the White House?
I'd say TikTok helped you out, Trump. So you should leave it there. Not too sure, but save TikTok, Donald Trump, please.
Would you meet him?
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love to talk to him about animals and conservation and climate change and all of that. So yeah.
These are the things that you often post on TikTok. And V Spear, what's your message to Donald Trump?
Donald Trump often talks about the mandate that the American people gave him to drain the swamp and to fix our corrupt government. And so what I would say is he needs to look into the fact that the TikTok bill was never debated on the Senate floor and demand that we are actually shown proof that it is a national security threat before they create this economic apocalypse and shut it down. I do believe that Donald Trump will keep it going, and I hope that he keeps his promise.
Fee Spear, Carl Thomas, thank you very much for coming on the programme. I want to pick it up with our panel, Bonnie Greer, Gordon Sondland, and first, Michael Wolff. Where do you stand, Michael Wolff, on the TikTok ban?
Well, I have young children, so I'm delighted that TikTok may be no more. I think it's been a pernicious influence on a whole generation of young people, particularly young girls. So,
but that's not from a national security perspective.
Absolutely. So that's just cream on top. I think from a national security perspective, it is probably true. The Chinese control this company. The Chinese have access to an enormous, an extraordinary motherlode of data, like never before. There has never been a situation like this. So a bipartisan group, probably one of the few bipartisan steps that has been taken in the last number of years, was to close down TikTok.
Okay, right. And Bonnie Greer, from a cultural perspective, as an author, and cultural figure, will it be a loss, do you think, if TikTok goes?
I'm, first of all, very grateful to listen to those two people. I've never heard anyone explain TikTok in that way. That was brilliant what they said. That was really important for me to hear. TikTok is obviously a mirror, and it's a mirror that people have never really had before. What that young guy can do is actually hone down his personality and send pieces of it out to the world and have people relate to that. Donald Trump won on TikTok because he took an aspect of his personality and did that. The problem is, and I don't have an answer, is when stuff goes in, where does it come out? And we don't really know that yet. And I think that's the problem. I respect TikTokers. I think a lot of stuff is great. Where does everything go?
And Gordon Sondland, I think this might be one thing you actually agree with Michael Wolff on in terms of the ban on TikTok. But what do you think Donald Trump will do? He's been talking about, he said he had a warm spot in his heart for TikTok.
I'm a fan of TikTok as long as the Chinese don't control it. It's very definitely a national security risk. A lot of why it's a national security risk is actually classified. But I can assure you that if TikTok were in friendly Western hands, where the algorithm is controlled by Westerners, not the Chinese, I think it's perfectly fine.
Do you think Donald Trump will agree with you and won't overturn this ban, or how do you think he'll?
I think Donald Trump will pressure the owners of TikTok to sell to an American buyer.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Just time to take a quick look at a few of the stories on the front pages. And if we start with the Daily Telegraph, that's a different story about Donald Trump, aside from a picture about Liz Truss, who's going to the inauguration party. Trump to rule on Starmer's Chagos deal. That is yet another thing in the president's in tray. As he comes in, FT weekend, Starmer touts Trump relationship. That is faith, the PM says, in having a constructive relationship with Donald Trump. The Times has a different story. Labour's tax plans trigger exodus of millionaires. They have numbers suggesting there's been a huge rise in the rich quitting the UK since the election. iWeekend, very different story. Train drivers to demand bigger 2025 pay deal in the new headache for Labour. Looks like Labour has got a few headaches to deal with, though, in terms of what these newspapers are saying today. And Daily Mail, tomorrow's Daily Mail, this is a story about a secret diary of Hitler's English girlfriend that has been found after 80 years. And the Daily Mail, the Daily Mirror tributes to a football great. That's farewell to Dennis Law, who has died at the age of 84. So that is the papers. That is all from us at Broadcasting House tonight. Victoria is back on Monday. Thank you so much to the panel. Thank you all for your company. Till Monday, have a great weekend. Good night.